Hi everyone, my name is Cyril and I'm going to be exciting to speak about the security journey and the Filecoin Auditor network today. As Ken mentioned this morning, partnering with security auditors is just one small step of the security journey. But just to get started, why you need to think about security and security audits especially is probably because it's very unlikely you're going to ship 100% perfect code. So that's something you need to recognize. It's very likely going to need support over the course of your journey. And as soon as you realize you're going to need an audit, you're going to need to dedicate a lot of time to be ready for an audit, for instance. So think about cleaning the code base, document it, conduct unit testing, make sure you understand how to define the scope of the audit. So there's going to be a bit of work that's going to be needed to prepare for the audit. And then security audit is going to be one of the different tools you're going to be leveraging. So we've listed here a few. One thing, for instance, that can be interesting also for you is to invest in security training, for instance. That's usually something pretty cheap. It's going to cost less than $5,000. But it's a way already to make sure your team's going to be ready for the audit, flag the small issues that you don't need an expensive firm to focus on, and really add value to the long term. We spoke about hacks as well. It's obviously pretty scary to see that more than 7 billion was at stake through hacks in the past few years. However, we're talking only about 200 hacks, right? So the number of hacks is still a manageable number, which means it's relatively easy to learn from it. It's easy to study the list of hacks. Like here, we listed a few sources to get information about the latest, get deep analysis about different hacks that happen in the industry, see what might be relevant for your project as well. So what is the type of hacks that could happen to you as well. You'll see there are many communities also discussing these hacks in detail. And so one advice we give usually to projects is to spend time to analyze this, learn from it, to be ready and be more prepared when they think about security. If you look a bit at the number as well, half of the value taken from hacks is from projects that are not audited. There are hacks also that are happening for things where it was not related to the audit. In some cases, we don't really have information, so we don't know if the project, which firm has audited the project, what kind of audit there was. So we know there was some security audit, but there's not a lot of information. And for roughly 20% of the case, we know there was an audit. The audit report is available. And that's typically as well a good source of information to learn about what went wrong and see what could be done differently in the future. Another way to look at the data from hacks, so this is an analysis from a smart contract audit firm called Omnicia. If you look at it in a dynamic way, you can see data about hacks for audited smart contract and non-audited. A key learning here is this is very dynamic, so it's something to monitor constantly. When you're going to be choosing a security firm, obviously you're going to want to know about the reputation of the firm. And so monitoring which project has been hacked and who was the audit firm behind is a good way to keep track on the reputation of the different firms you might be working with. It's not that easy to choose a security partner in an industry that is relatively fragmented. So when you think about smart contract audit firms, there are more than 100 firms that do smart contract audit, including 50 that have more than 10 employees, so that have a large enough size also. You can differentiate audit firms by chain expertise, Some have a specific focus on specific methodology, like formal verification. The range of service by firm also is going to be important. Something that is traditionally important in Web 2 is also the geographical focus. So it's a bit less relevant in Web 3, but that might be a criteria people use to make decision. And obviously, there's a wide range of quality, different levels of transparency. So making decisions about which partner to select can take time and is not an easy one. And so what we're going to do today is to deep dive on a few criteria that can be leveraged to select the right firm. And one of them, obviously, is going to be one of the key criteria will be around quality. That's typically a category type of service where obviously like quality is going to be what matters the most. You might not want to save money when you think about doing an audit, but really focus on who's going to be the firm you can trust. And it's going to start with a team expertise. So how deep, how long they've been working in the industry, the type of audits they've done in the past. Web3 is a relatively new industry, so it's difficult to find the teams that have very strong expertise. Something else that will be very important is the expertise with your stack. So that's why here, for instance, we're going to share today about the auditors that have experience with Filecoin. Because basically, if you leverage an auditor that has no expertise at all with your stack, you're basically going to pay to train them. So that's something you should consider. It's not always easy to find who has the right expertise, but definitely something is going to make the audit much more efficient. In some case, you might think about the sub-industry expertise. So if you do a game, working with an auditor that has expertise in gaming is going to be important. There are even some firms that are specialized on specific type of industry. And one thing that is a bit more difficult to control also will be the team that is being lined up for your project. Because even if you select the most relevant firm for your project, you don't have the guarantee that the team that will be working on your project actually has the same kind of expertise. So that's something when you speak with different auditors, something probably you're going to consider is their ability to guarantee that you will have the top team for your project. And of course, a criteria also important will be the community trust in the brand of the audit firm, right? So there is some value of having an auditor that is well trusted in an ecosystem to bring confidence to your project. Another set of criteria that are even a bit more challenging will be around price and availability. So typically price for an audit will be based on number of line of code, complexity, and then the daily rate of the firm. This is usually not public, so you'll have to usually speak with the different firms to understand this information, or speak with people who have expertise of the industry to give you an idea of how much you should pay for the audit. You can have a big range, so for the same kind of audit, the quote you will get can be 3x or 4x, depending on the firm. And obviously, there is some cyclicity in the industry, which is reflected in the price. And so usually one advice we give here for teams that look for an audit is at least aim for a few quotes from different providers to be able to get an idea of how much they should pay for the audit. Another criteria will be around availability. So it's very frustrating sometimes to spend a few weeks to select the right auditor, then to realize you're going to have to wait 3 months for the audit to get started. And so best advice here is to engage very early on. As soon as you know you're going to need an audit in the next 6 months, it's probably a good time to start discussing with a few firms to understand who is going to be the right fit and when they will be available for the project. And here we've listed a set of criteria as well to consider when you select an auditor. One of them is the scope of services included, so which will be very different depending on the firm you speak with. The business model might be interesting as well. So for some firms, all of the team is in-house. So when you work with them, you know you work with one of the auditors that has been trained for several years with them. Some other teams are leveraging a hybrid model, meaning they have in-house auditors and also leverage freelance external auditors, which might be interesting if you're looking for very specific expertise. Location, we discussed this before. The type of collaboration also during the project will be important. So some firms prefer to do the audit, work independently, and then send you back the result after a few weeks. Some are much more collaborative, where you have the ability to discuss any bug, any issue they find, and almost fix it on the fly. Track record, we mentioned this when we discuss the hacks, is something that is very dynamic as well. So like you might want to monitor the project that have been audited by the firm and if any hack happened recently. The size of the firm might be a criteria as well if you prefer. There are many firms that are very small, very nimble, like we're talking about 2 to 5 people. And so it might be a good fit if you want to really feel like the team is almost part of your project. And also as well, level of transparency. So you have firms that will give you a lot of details about what they found, where for some the details are minimal. So that's going to be typically the other kind of criteria to consider when selecting a firm. Here we've listed also a few sources of information to find auditors and decide with whom to engage. There are many ways to find information. You're going to find on Google a lot of lists about the top 10, 20, 100 firms to work with in the industry. Something we've noticed in the past 6 months that is very exciting is that we see more and more people using LLM to get information about which firm to select. And so, for instance, we see on ChatGPT people putting a request where they say, hey, give me the list of the top 5 smart contract audit firms with expertise in Filecoin, put them in a table and give me 5 criteria to help me decide. So that's something you can do on ChatGPT. It's going to work very well for category where there is a lot of public information that can be trusted. It's not going to work very well right now for smart contract audit firms because most of the information is not public, right? So ChatGPT will give you information about price, availability, that is usually a bit fake and cannot really be trusted. But we heard from smart contract audit firms that more and more they have clients that come to them that first learn through ChatGPT about them. And so that's an interesting new channel to acquire clients for this firm and something we feel is pretty interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see how it evolves in the next few years. For firms that have a very strong brand, you can check also their social media. So here we put Halborn as an example. It's usually a good source of information to understand what kind of project they've done recently. They're going to share reports about hacks in the industry as well. So there's going to be a lot of learning opportunities. We've listed here as well for people from the Filecoin ecosystem, a specific marketplace that has been built by Protocol Labs to give access to service providers that have experience working with a network. So that's a way to see which provider has experience working with a network and what their kind of specialty are. We've listed as well a list of events. We're at ECC this week. There are probably like more than 15 firms that are organizing events. And so it's a good way to meet with them and speak with them live and understand if they're going to be a fit for the audit. And of course, the Filecoin Foundation is going to be a great source of information. So here we listed Ken email address for anyone who might in-depth assessment. And as well, they have data points about which provider has been working with the network and can help make decision. So now assume you find the top 3 you want to work with. At this stage, usually the best practice is to do a reference check about the auditor. And so the first step usually is to identify who could bring you a good reference about the auditor. Try to understand how they approach the process of selecting the auditor, so what was important for them, and see if this influences as well your purchasing criteria. So we've listed here a few reviews we had recently about smart contract audit firms, just to give you an idea of what was important. So like we haven't put any name here, but like this is typically the type of review we get from people working with service providers, with smart contract audit firms. And you can see it's a good way to analyze what was important for the client. So you can see things about responsiveness, willingness to exchange with bugs. There are reviews about pricing. You'll find like the first one is also interesting because it's mentioning something about the economic risk, right? So like the client was very happy with the performance of the auditor to evaluate the smart contract audit risk, but realized they missed something related to the economic risk. And so that's something important as well to consider when you think about an audit, is you're going to expect the auditor to be really good at understanding issue with the code, but also understand the economic logic of what you're trying to do, and usually have a strong mathematical background as well. And so that's a lot of skills, and that's also one of the reasons why it's difficult to find an auditor, is because the people who master all these different skills are actually pretty rare. There is a very small talent pool, and that's why also it's very difficult to scale a very big smart contract audit firm. So the whole process is going to be pretty time-consuming. We're talking about usually a few weeks long. And so one advice we give to project is at least to try to optimize on very quickly figuring out which firms are a fit for their project. There are things you're not going to control, like the time it takes to get a quote. Usually it takes a few days because the auditor needs to look at the code, assess it, and then price the project. You need to set up payment, NDA. So there are things that are going to take time. One thing you can really optimize is to try to get help to very quickly identify who is the fit for your project. Here we're mentioning a few firms that have experience with Filecoin and the kind of audits they've done in the past. Filecoin has experience working with between 10 and 15 firms, and so that's a lot of data points to give back to the ecosystem about who has a very strong fit for which kind of project. We've listed here, for instance, Oak Security, who was the auditor of FVM. Consensus Diligence has done many projects with the ecosystem, including auditing Glyph. Zokyo was involved with Web3 Mine smart contract audit contract. The ecosystem worked with NCC Group, Sigma Prime, List Authority, who was in charge of Venus. In multiple occasions as well, the ecosystem worked with independent experts that have usually a very strong expertise. So one of them being GPO Mason for cryptography. Fuzzing Labs is an interesting partner that work on Lurk and was also involved in training some of the team for specific language. And the ecosystem has experience also working with Sherlock for contest and bug bounties. And so the reason why we're sharing these few names here is to also make sure, like, whenever someone needs an audit and needs feedback about different providers that have been working in the network, that they know they can go to the foundation who has ongoing discussion with this provider, but also like new ones that might be a good fit for the future needs of the network. And now just to finish the talk, we're going to share also a bit about how the ecosystem can leverage Mosea in the future and what we're building. And so one of the problems we're trying to solve, as we've discussed, is that it's usually pretty hard to find expertise in Web3. It's very fragmented. The best providers are busy months in advance. And so that's usually something that is very time consuming and make it very difficult to work in Web3. And so if we want to accelerate Web3, we need to have great solutions for this kind of problem to make sure we increase adoption across users. And so one of the things we're building is a multi-AI agent OS. And I'm going to share a few examples on how it works and how we believe this can solve a lot of problems. And so one example is when it comes to procurement. It's the ability to go through our system that's going to use different agents to solve this specific problem. So let's say you need a smart contract audit firm. The system, we build a first agent that is a category manager. So that's going to understand if your problem indeed requires a security auditor. Then it's going to build a second agent that will be the sourcing specialist, really focused on identifying who is going to be the great fit. So 1, 2, 3 firms that are a good fit for your audit. It's going to build an agent able to draft the contract with them, coordinate the process, etc. So it's really like using this different kind of AI agent to solve this problem. And so the benefit we saw already is speed and better matching. So there is an increase in speed and great quality of decision. The second is that it brings you a lot of transparency about what the different AI agents are doing. So as a user, you can see how the system has decided to build different AI agents and what they're doing, and so you can assess if they bring you the value you expect. And it's also going to be a system that helps very small team to scale very fast and really understand what kind of capabilities they need to add to their team long term to keep building the business. And so I see in the room also a few people who might be more on the service provider side. We have built this system also to be used the other way around. So if you're a service provider or smart contract auditor, one thing we realized by speaking with them was that it's sometimes pretty hard to articulate their offering and surface very niche expertise. Every time you do a new project, you have new capabilities coming, and it becomes pretty difficult to clearly explain to different clients what you do well, and make sure they find you when they need you. And so this multi-AI agent OS can also be used as a way to support smart contract audit firm. And here, for instance, like it's going to build the marketing manager who is going to be in charge of structuring the offering. Right? So really understanding what the company does and structure it around 2-3 categories that are easy to digest. Then the sales engineer will be the one bringing the right reference to each offering to show the expertise in each of the categories. The system will create a content strategist as well to be able to do long-form content about the offering. Social media manager to figure out how to share this on social media, etc. And so as well, like we believe this is a good way to increase quality of matching. So make sure it's very easy for clients to understand what the provider does pretty well. Sometimes do some upsell. So many firms have different offerings. So they do smart contract audit, but they might also be able to support with crypto economics or penetration testing, so different kind of service. And so it's a good way to articulate the whole offering and really the ability to focus on the core service provided. All right, and that's it for today. Thanks, everyone.